Let's be real here, anyone who's set up a 20-gallon tank has imagined it becoming this perfect underwater world until the fish start fighting over territory. Today we're ranking some of the most popular fish for a 20-gallon tank, from the absolute best cream of the crop choices to ones you should definitely avoid. I have kept or observed all of these in community tanks over the years, so this list comes from actual experience, not just internet research. You're welcome. Let's figure out which fish really thrive in 20 gallons. These small cichlids bring serious personality to a 20-gallon setup. They're colorful, intelligent, and genuinely interesting to watch, though they can be a bit dramatic when breeding season arrives. Here's the thing. Males can become quite territorial, especially in standard 20-gallon tanks. You really want a 20 long to give them enough horizontal space to establish their territories properly. That said, watching a bonded pair guard their fry is one of the most fascinating behaviors in freshwater fish keeping. They're interactive, curious, and may even learn to recognize their keepers. The challenge is that their temperament can shift significantly during breeding season, so you want a peace tank to absolutely avoid TV soap opera drama. You need to plan your tank layout very carefully. So, they land in B tier. Excellent centerpiece fish, if you understand their needs, but they require some experience. Ember tetras are peaceful schooling fish at their finest, small, bright orange, and constantly moving. They look like tiny flames drifting about your aquarium. They're best kept in groups of 8 or more and look beautiful against live plants and darker substrates. These fish are not picky about food, and they get along with virtually any tank mate that won't try to eat them. Same. What makes them special is how they bring energy to the tank without creating chaos. They school tightly and they fill the mid-level with some warm color. For a balanced, relaxing aquarium, embers are pretty dang hard to beat. They're also quite forgiving with water parameters, making them suitable for both beginners and experienced keepers. They're nearly perfect for a 20-gallon, and that's why they easily earn A tier. Reliable, peaceful, and consistently beautiful. If there's one fish that nearly every aquarist loves, it's the Cory catfish. These bottom-dweller aquatic capybaras are a cleanup crew you'll actually enjoy watching. They search for leftover food, sift through substrate with genuine enthusiasm, and they do it all with an endearing energy that makes you appreciate having them. They're peaceful, social, and happiest in groups. Watching several Corys move around together is like super delightful. They're also hardy, adaptable, and compatible with essentially every other fish on this list. The main consideration is providing soft substrate to protect their sensitive barbels, and sand works perfectly. Sure, they're not the flashiest fish in the hobby, but they compensate with personality. And in a community tank, they're the reliable workhorses that keep things running smooth. And that's why they sit comfortably in S tier goated status. Simply the best bottom dweller for a 20-gallon tank. Nothing else comes close. My dudes, the checkerboard cichlids, are like more refined versions of Apistogrammas. They're elegant with a territorial side that emerges during breeding. They've got this beautiful patterning and generally behave pretty well until breeding season begins. Then suddenly they establish boundaries and expect other fish to respect them. They are intelligent and they're very interesting to observe, but you need proper structure and plenty of hiding spots for peaceful coexistence. If you appreciate fish that genuinely interact with their environment and display complex social behaviors, they're rewarding to keep. However, without a 20 long tank and thoughtful aquascaping, it can become pretty pushy. When they're content, they're genuinely stunning. You'll find yourself watching them whenever they display, honestly. While they're charming and full of character, they're too particular to recommend, like, universally. That places them alongside Apistogrammas in B tier. A wonderful fish, but plan your setup carefully. A Betta in a 20-gallon tank is genuinely giving them room to thrive. Most people keep them in small containers, which is unfortunate, but in a proper 20-gallon setup, you really get to see their personality emerge. They explore, display their fins, and move through the tank with confidence. The key here is choosing the right variety. Short fin types handle water flow better, while long fin bettas prefer calmer water. They appreciate warmer temperatures and do well with gentle filtration and live plants to rest near. You can even build a peaceful community around them if you choose calm tank mates carefully. Though individual temperament does vary considerably, Some are quite peaceful, while others see everything as a potential rival, so that's fun. Other times they can be bullied by more energetic fish too, so they're just unpredictable, and that is both their charm and their challenge. They're excellent for 20 gallon, but not ideal for every setup, placing them in B tier. A beautiful, classic choice with the occasional attitude. Zebra danios are energetic, active fish that never seem to stop moving. They're hardy, beginner-friendly, and they tolerate cooler water, but that constant activity can stress calmer species. So, in a 20 gallon, they're going to dominate those upper levels, darting back and forth with remarkable energy. They're wonderful if you enjoy watching active fish, but they can be overwhelming in smaller tanks or more timid species around them. They do better in larger schools with plenty of open swimming space. If you want a high-energy tank, they're fantastic, but if you're looking for tranquility, they might prove a little too boisterous for you and your other fish. And so, that's why they belong in the C tier. Entertaining to watch, but not suited to every 20-gallon community. Honestly, if it were me, I'd run a 20-gallon long here as the absolute minimum. Rummy nose tetras are the living indicators of water quality. I say that, but their nose color literally reflects how healthy and comfortable they are. When their noses are bright red, you know conditions are excellent. Pretty cool. They school very tightly and look striking in planted tanks with soft, slightly acidic water. The challenge is that they can be somewhat sensitive during acclimation or when parameters shift suddenly. Once established, though, they're among the most elegant and coordinated schooling fish available. Watching a group of rummy noses turn in perfect synchronization is genuinely mesmerizing. They're peaceful, graceful, and they look more expensive than they actually are. Because of their sensitivity, though, they're not quite beginner level, but they are absolutely worth the extra attention. That is going to place them way up in the A tier. Dependable, gorgeous, and a bit refined. Now, Bolivian rams are somewhat underappreciated in smaller tanks. They're calm, colorful, and considerably less demanding than German blue rams. Still, a 20-gallon is just adequate space for them. It's not quite ideal, especially if you're keeping a pair. They prefer sand substrate, warmer water, and peaceful tank mates, and they like having some territory to claim as their own. Their gentle movements and curious nature make them pleasant to observe, but while they can survive in a 20-gallon, it's kind of borderline. You need to maintain clean, stable conditions. In a larger tank, that's where they truly thrive. In a 20-gallon, they're managing, but not quite flourishing. You know what I mean? So for that reason, we're going to pop them down in C tier. Workable for experienced fish keepers, but not the most natural fit. Now, tiger barbs here are visually appealing, bold stripes, vibrant colors, but these guys are way too unhinged for most community setups. They're semi-aggressive fish that need large groups to keep their behavior balanced, and in a 20-gallon, you simply can't maintain enough of them to spread out that aggression. What happens instead here is fin nipping and absolute chaos. They'll harass calmer fish, stress everyone in the tank, and nip others for the plot alone. They're excellent in larger setups with other active species, but in a 20-gallon community tank, they're problematic. That's why they firmly belong in F tier. Not because they're inherently bad fish, but because this tank size ain't accommodating for their needs. Now, Kribensis can be either wonderful or challenging depending on your setup. They're colorful, unfussy about food, and fascinating when they pair up. The issue, like most other dwarf cichlids, is their breeding behavior. Once they start protecting eggs or fry, every other fish becomes a potential threat. They're devoted parents, but difficult neighbors during that phase. Give them caves in a 20-foot long, and they can work beautifully as centerpiece species. They're personable, interactive, and generally forgiving outside of breeding mode. But in standard 20-gallon setups without adequate hiding spots, they will create tension. For that reason, Kribensis lands solidly in B tier. Excellent fish, with some behavioral considerations to manage. Dwarf gourami are visually stunning. Bright blues, reds, and oranges that seem to glow under aquarium lighting. However, they can be territorial, particularly towards similarly shaped fish. Additionally, many commercial bred varieties are prone to health issues like iridovirus. If you find a healthy specimen, though, they're genuinely enjoyable to keep. They move gracefully throughout the tank, interact with their keeper, and make an attractive centerpiece in a planted setup. The challenge is that they're not always straightforward. You need to choose tank mates carefully and hope you get a healthy individual. While they're undeniably very beautiful, they fall into C tier because they're somewhat unpredictable, but gosh, they're so rewarding when things really do go well. Harlequin rasboras are as dependable as schooling fish get. Peaceful, active, and beautifully patterned, they're perfect, and I mean perfect for small community tanks. They school nicely, adapt to various conditions, and coexist peacefully with virtually any compatible species. You don't need to worry about aggression, special dietary requirements, or demanding behavior, they simply work. A group of 8 or more creates that classic schooling effect, always moving but never creating chaos. They also have a soft copper sheen that looks just gorgeous under proper lighting. Honestly, it's difficult to find any significant drawbacks. They're hardy, peaceful, and straightforward to keep, and that right there, my friends, is textbook S tier. If you're stocking a 20-gallon and want guaranteed harmony, these little boys are your ideal schooling fish. Cardinal tetras are among the most desirable tetras out there. Everybody wants them, but they have higher requirements than some of the alternatives. They're vibrant, graceful, and stunning in schools, but they need warm, soft, clean water to really thrive. I'm not saying they're fragile, but they are very particular. In a 20-gallon, they'll do well if you stay consistent with water changes and maintain stable parameters. Their colors stand out beautifully against dark substrate and plants, making them one of the most attractive mid-level swimmers that you can keep. However, they're not quite as adaptable as Ember tetras or Harlequin rasboras, which is why they land in the C tier. Undeniably beautiful, but a bit too demanding for most small tank setups. The honey gourami is like the dwarf gourami's calmer relative. Same graceful movement, but without the territorial issues. They're small, peaceful, and well suited for a community 20-gallon setup. Their golden orange coloring adds warmth to any aquarium, and they get along with nearly everybody. They're curious, but they never get aggressive, and they enjoy staying near the surface, occasionally rising for air in that distinctive labyrinth fish way. They're also surprisingly hardy and don't require specialized conditions to thrive, and the best part? They bring all the visual appeal of a centerpiece fish without the temperament challenge. You can keep them with peaceful tetras, rasboras, or Corys, and conflicts are extremely rare. They're essentially a stress-free choice, and that is why they belong in A tier. Visually appealing, friendly, and perfect for anyone who prioritizes harmony. I don't know why I said it like that. Anyone who prioritizes harmony. Moving on. Cherry barbs are dependable additions to community tanks. They're colorful, active, and remarkably adaptable. Males develop that deep red coloration when content, and it looks really, really good in a planted setup. They're schooling fish, but they don't swim in tight formations, so they give your tank a natural, relaxed appearance. They're peaceful enough for most community setups, and they can handle a range of temperatures, even cooler ones, which makes them pretty gosh dang versatile. You can keep them with live bears, rasboras, or even small gourami, and they'll coexist peacefully. Feed them well, keep them in small groups, and you'll have a healthy school that thrives long term. They're easy to recommend for beginners or anyone who wants balance in their aquarium. With their low-maintenance nature and consistent beauty, cherry barbs earn easy A tier. Dependable, colorful, and peaceful. Now, the Peacock gudgeon might be one of the most underappreciated fish for small tanks. They've got striking electric blue and yellow patterns that catch your eye every time they move. These fish occupy the bottom and lower mid-levels where they explore caves and crevices with curiosity. They can be semi-territorial with other bottom dwellers, but manageable if you design your layout thoughtfully. Watching a pair court and display those vibrant fins is genuinely entertaining. They're small, interactive, and full of personality too. They accept prepared foods readily and appreciate slightly warmer water. Just avoid overcrowding the bottom. They appreciate having their own space. Peacock gudgeons have a combo of beauty and character that makes them interesting without being problematic. They earn their spot in B tier. Beautiful, personable, but a bit particular about their territory. And who isn't? The Splendid killifish lives up to its name. Yeah. These small fish shimmer with color under proper lighting. They're true showpieces, especially if you appreciate unique species that aren't commonly kept. However, they've got specific requirements. They need a covered tank because, well, they're excellent jumpers, and they prefer soft, clean water with some surface cover. They don't tolerate strong currents well either, so keep that in mind. Once you meet their needs, though, they reward you with beautiful behavior and color displays. Males display constantly, and their movements are smooth and deliberate, almost mesmerizing. They're not commonly seen in community setups because they're somewhat specialized, but in a dedicated or carefully planned tank, they do very well. Splendid killifish deserve more attention than they receive, but those extra care requirements do place them in C tier. Fascinating fish, but not the easiest fit for a 20-gallon community. Redeye tetras are hardy, active, and visually appealing. They can become problematic in a 20-gallon though. They grow larger and become bolder than many people seem to expect. In this tank size, they can turn pushy, especially towards smaller or slower fish. They're schooling fish that need adequate room to move, and a 20-gallon constrains them. In a larger tank, they're excellent. They're lively and they're social with appropriate energy levels, but here, they risk becoming territorial. They're not a disaster, just mismatched for the space. Think of them as fish that need more room to show their best behavior. Because of that, they fall into D tier. Interesting fish, but the wrong tank size, man. Now, goldfish in a 20-gallon tank is a common beginner mistake that many people have made or considered making. They're hardy, yes, and they'll survive for a while, but thriving is, well, that's different. These fish grow large, they produce substantial waste, and they need plenty of oxygen and swimming room. A single fancy goldfish might manage temporarily, but long-term, it's not appropriate. Common goldfish? Absolutely not. They belong in ponds or very large tanks. Goldfish, despite popular belief, are wonderful and intelligent pets that, when kept properly, thrive, but a 20-gallon ain't suitable. Even with excellent filtration, you'll constantly battle water quality issues. They're like trying to keep a large dog in a small apartment. You can do it, but it's not right, and that's why they belong in F tier. Wonderful fish, completely the wrong setup. Now, German rams are absolutely beautiful. The colors, the fin shape, the personality, amazing, but also demanding. They need warm, soft, and pristine water, or they become stressed easily. And in a 20-gallon, it's difficult to provide them enough stable space, especially if you want to keep a pair or add tank mates to them. And they're sensitive to water quality, and so those little fluctuations in a 20-gallon affect them pretty quickly. Watching them thrive is rewarding, but that requires experience, time, and careful attention. Oh, and a little bit of space. So for most people, it's challenging in this tank size. They really excel in 40-gallon tanks where they have adequate space to move. In a 20-gallon, maintaining ideal conditions is pretty difficult, and that is why we're going to put them down into E tier. Undeniably beautiful, but too demanding for this setup. Guppies. These are the extremely popular community tank fish, colorful, friendly, and constantly active. They're so easy to breed that you'll end up with many offspring before you even realize it. In a 20-gallon, that can become pretty overwhelming unless you manage it carefully. But aside from that consideration, they are adaptable, they're hardy, and compatible with most peaceful fish. You can mix colors and tail types for a pretty interesting and varied display, and they're perfect for beginners who want active fish in their tanks. The key is keeping males and females balanced, or just keep all males to avoid constant breeding. They're low maintenance and highly rewarding to watch, and guppies fit right into B tier. Classic, dependable, and enjoyable, but with some breeding to manage. The white cloud mountain minnow is an underrated fish for small aquariums. Hardy, peaceful, and content in cooler water. They are, without a doubt, extremely forgiving. They are sometimes called the poor man's neon tetra, but that is selling them way too short. They've got subtle shimmer, gentle schooling behavior, and they handle conditions that would stress most tropical fish. The only consideration is temperature. They do prefer those cooler setups, which means they're not compatible with the tropical species that need warmer water. Duh. In an unheated 20-gallon tank though, they'll thrive beautifully. They're excellent for beginners or anyone who wants a low-maintenance setup with peaceful movement, and that balance of durability, beauty, and simplicity earns them a spot in A tier. Not flashy, but reliable and consistently peaceful. So my friends, that is the ranking, from the peaceful, reliable choices to the ones that create a little bit of drama. The 20-gallon tank offers many good options if you plan carefully, but not every fish belongs in that space. But I'm curious, what about you guys? Which of these have you kept, and what was your experience? Share your thoughts and stocking experiences down in the comments below. We all learn from each other, right? And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this with other fish keepers you know. See you in the next one.